I'm Aaron Robinette. I'm the head coach of Athletic Power and Performance, and I've been a personal trainer for the greater part of 3 decades now. This is my shopping guide to exercise equipment. I'm breaking this video down into 3 sections. The first section, I'm covering strength equipment. The second section, I'm covering cardio types of equipment. And the third section, I'm covering stretch and massage type tools. In each of these pieces of equipment, I will be covering the pros and the cons of the equipment and why this particular piece of equipment makes it onto my list. This way you get a full idea of what the exercise equipment provides and whether it will work for you or the person you're shopping for. One quick note, as I'm quoting prices on the pieces of equipment at this current time, these are the current non-sale prices at the time of this filming. Most of these were actually discounted, but I wanted to give more of an idea of what the actual price was, just in case whatever the discount was went off sale. The first piece of equipment is a Swiss ball. This is also known as an exercise ball or a stability ball. I always like to call it the Swiss ball. There's a variety of different reasons why this makes it on my list, and it's my top choice in the strength list. So there's a variety of different exercises. It has a lot of versatility. So it has versatility in the exercise, and you can also use it. It can be part of a stretching mechanism as well. So it creates a lot of balance needs. Especially as we get older, our balance starts to decline, so we need to train that balance. And it also has a lot of core recruitment because the ball is a little bit unstable. Those are the pros. The cons, actually, for this particular piece of equipment, kind of go pro and con. So a con can be if you're new to exercise, or the person that you're shopping for is relatively new to exercise, or they're challenged with balance, they can have a challenge initially using the ball. For me as a trainer, that's actually a pro, because that's helping them develop a little bit more balance and stability. But if you're exercising alone, that can feel more like a con. The other con that people may find is they're not able to lift as much weight using this. The reason for that is actually not because you're not developing strength, it's because you're having to use a lot more stabilization. The more stabilization your body has to use, the more the weight that you're lifting goes down. Now the cost for this guy, in this particular one, this is a 65 centimeter, and you want to make sure when you get on the link down below, you check the sizing guide and get the right size for you. 65 centimeter it usually covers most of the clients I train. I do also have a 55 centimeter I have people train with, depending on the size, the height they are. But this particular ball at 65 centimeter is roughly around $60. You may be thinking, well, I can go out to a local retailer and pick a ball up for $10 or $20. This particular case with a Swiss ball or an exercise ball or stability ball, you want to spend the money here. The key thing with this is you want to make sure that the ball has a burst rating. Those cheap balls will not have a burst rating, and that increases the risk those balls will burst as you're using it, which can cause an injury. The other thing is you really want to have a solid, heavy ball, especially if you're using this ball for strength training, so using weights with the ball. The next piece of equipment on my list are suspension straps. Now there's 2 main dominant brands out there. There are the TRX, and then there's these guys, which I actually prefer, which are Lifeline Jungle Gym XT. And the reason why I prefer these is, first of all, you have the molded handle, so your feet can go in here pretty easily. And the anchor point actually can be separate. So you can actually have a wide or narrow anchor point, whereas the TRX, you have a single anchor point. There's nothing wrong with the TRX. I just happen to prefer the Lifeline Jungle Gym XT more than the TRX. But most people that you run into, they'll actually be using the TRX. So the reason why this is on my list so high is, first of all, this is a whole gym setup right here. The nice thing about this is if you use weights with these, that expands your capability of what you can do with the straps. But just getting these straps right here, this will be a full gym workout, everything that you need, at least initially. So that's the pros for the suspension straps. The cons are you have a limited amount you can expand on unless you add weight to it, like I was just mentioning. So there's only so much body weight you can train with this before you have to add some stuff to it. So that is a con. But for the most part, these guys are pro. There's a lot of pros to these. Now the cost for these, relatively inexpensive, especially for what you get. This particular set, non-discounted price is $100. And the other ones, the TRX, those are $199 for a typical set of those. Again, both links are down in the description. The next piece of exercise equipment on my list are dumbbells. In this particular case, these are power blocks. So the nice thing about these guys is they're compact and they're really versatile. So this is a full system, and this goes all the way from 2.5 pounds, and the set that you see right here goes all the way up to 90 pounds in 2.5 pound increments. So the original set I got, so I've had these for over 20 years. I've had these set, and the original set right here goes up to 50 pounds, and these particular ones are expandable. So when you go in the link in the description, the ones you're going to find are expandable. There are other sets that Power Block sells that are not expandable. So keep that in mind when you're purchasing them, that if you want weight to go up past 50 pounds or whatever the set is, you need to make sure that you're buying an expandable set. So let me show you a couple different things about these guys. So like I said, these adjust this way, so they're a selectorized guy like that. So then that gets a little bit more weight. And then so that's 10 pounds each time I'm selectorizing it. So how I get in between that is you pull this guy out, and there's little weights in here. So each one of these is 5 pounds. So or 2.5 pounds. I just took 2.5 pounds out and then took 5 pounds out. And that makes this right here 10 pounds. And if I put these in, it's 12.5 pounds if I put one in, and then 15 pounds if I put both of those in. So those are the pros. There's a lot of pros about this. Like I said, you have a compact set. It fits nicely in one little area. Now let's talk about the cons. First of all, the price. As this sits right here, so a pair of these guys is $299. So that's the cost is a little bit of a con, but I'm going to talk about that relative to what you would get or how much you'd be spending if you were buying all the dumbbells. The other con to these is they can be a little bit awkward. Now, like I said, I've had these over 20 years. I don't feel the awkwardness at all right now for myself. But when I work with clients on these, they will feel awkward with this. So there's definitely a little bit of awkwardness. This 50-pound dumbbell is a little bit bigger and a little bit bulkier than if you had just a single 50-pound dumbbell that didn't have any adjustability. So that's another con to this. I don't find it much of a con, but it's something to be aware of, that it's going to feel a little differently than the whole set of dumbbells. Now let me talk about this in the expandability versus if you got all the dumbbells, or even if you went 10-pound increments, you're going to be spending a lot more than you would for this set if you got 10-pound increments just for the dumbbells. And again, this is more adjustable than that. So the one more thing I want to talk about is the expansion sets. So like I said, I've had these for over 20 years, and I've only recently purchased the expansion sets. So the first expansion, and let me pull this guy up, make sure I get that, is up to 70 pounds if you have the whole system all together. So that's this guy right here. And then you notice there's more dumbbells or more plates down here. The second expansion is 90, it takes up to 90 pounds. So let me talk about the cost for that. The original set is again $299. The first expansion is $199. And then the second expansion is $170. Now again, that is a lot of money to spend initially, but it's a lot less than if you're buying all the dumbbells individually. And again, it compacts into a small little area. Next on my list of strength equipment are kettlebells. Now there's a lot of different things you can do with kettlebells. I love kettlebells to work with them. Even just holding them for weights for normal exercises, such as lunges and even doing some chest press. And there's a lot of dynamic strength that you can develop with kettlebells. It's the reason why I love kettlebells so much. They're really easy to hold and grip onto. And for some reason I like that the weight hanging down versus holding on to it like a traditional dumbbell where your hand in the handle. For certain exercises, I like that more. Now that's just listing some of the pros of the kettlebells. Now let me list some of the cons. First of all, the cost. One 10-pound kettlebell is $27. So if you're buying a pair, and I always like to have pairs, not that you necessarily need them for the kettlebells, but there's a lot more expansive exercises you can do when you have pairs of the same weight. So that's why I like to have pairs personally for myself. It's a little bit different being a trainer than if you have a home gym and say you have your dumbbells and you have a kettlebell here and there. That might be enough, but being in the business professionally, I need to have a lot more choices, especially for different clients for different needs. So that's one of the reasons why I like pairs, but you can do different things with them. For instance, I'll just give you one exercise. You're doing a push-up where you're going down and then you're doing a row into that. It's always good to have the same weight for that because otherwise you're lifting two different weights for that particular exercise. So that's one of the cons. The other one is storage for these. So I have a lot of my kettlebells over here in this corner. And if you notice, I don't have a lot of kettlebells, relatively speaking, but it starts to take up a lot of room. So it's always nice to have a storage rack, especially if you're getting more and more kettlebells, but it's going to start expanding the space that you're going to need just for the storage. So those are some of the cons, but overall, I really love the kettlebells. There's a lot of good uses for them. And again, a 10-pound kettlebell is $27. The next equipment on my list is exercise tubing. So I have a couple different, this is a whole system, and I also have a single tube as well. The thing I love about tubing is there's a lot of exercises you can mimic. You can mimic cable exercises with tubing, and it's relative to a cable machine, it's really inexpensive. So let me talk about a little bit of this particular system. So if you notice, there's actually 3 tubes on here. And there's a lot of versatility for this particular system. So if you're doing, for instance, a bicep curl, let me roll this guy out of the way, you can quickly either just step on one, so I'm going to try and step on the middle cord here. You can step on one to do the bicep curl, and that's relatively easy. Again, quickly, although I'm not really demonstrating it all that quickly. You can get 2, so you get double the weight there, or you can go ahead and get all 3, which I can't even lift this up. That's how heavy that is. So it's a really versatile system, and these guys, a little bit of challenge to getting out of here, but you can change these, so you can pull these out, and you can put different strength tubing just with these handles. It becomes a really versatile system in that way. And the way I use this particular system for my own workouts, and let me show you this really quickly. I'm going to unhook all these. See how fast I can do this. And then what I'll do is I'll hook it on the outside, just a single tube on both sides on the outside. And then I can use it this way. So for exercises like a oblique twist, I can use a single tube like that on a squat rack like that. So that's the advantages of that guy. But let me go ahead and talk about the other tubing, which is just a single tube. And in this case, if you want to get a little bit heavier or lighter strength, you need to buy different tubes. The cost is actually cheaper to do that, but again, it's not as versatile. The nice thing about this, I'll demonstrate the same exercise, and what you do in this case is you feed the one handle through the other, and then you have the same ability to do that same exercise. The major difference here though is this tubing is a lot looser than this tubing right here. So some of the cons, and just with tubing in general, it does not mimic regular weightlifting. So in other words, I was demonstrating the bicep curl. If I had weights, I'd have periods where it gets a little bit harder and periods where it would get a little bit easier. And it mimics normal movement. So when you're actually lifting stuff out and about, that's what you normally would run into, is periods where it's a little bit harder and a little bit easier. And if you train that way, you're preparing your body that way. With tubing, as you stretch it, the further you stretch it, the harder it becomes. So it's not really natural. So as I lift and lift and lift, as I get up here, with a regular weight, it would start to get a little bit easier, mimicking what you would actually do in real life. Whereas the tubing, it continues to get harder the further you go up. The other disadvantage to this is the tubing the rubber will break down and you'll end up having to replace it at some point. Now, as far as cost, that's relatively inexpensive versus buying the whole system. It'll take a long time for you to spend a lot on tubing to make up for the cost, for instance, with the power blocks. Although I love the power blocks and I think it definitely rates higher than tubing, that is one disadvantage to tubing, is it does wear out. Now the cost on that, for this particular system with both handles and 3 tubes, the cost for this is $40 for that system. Whereas for this particular tube, I think the cost I have is actually for a little bit lighter. It's the blue, whereas the purple is a little heavier than that. So the blue tubing, which is a little bit lighter than the purple, is $13. Next piece of equipment I have on my list is a Bosu Ball trainer. So a lot of versatility you can do with this particular piece of equipment. You can train either with the ball down, with the ball up. You can do a lot of exercises with the upper and lower body. You can do a lot of balance exercises. Quite versatile. I don't find this quite as versatile as like the Swiss ball, exercise ball at the beginning of this list, but there's a lot of things you can do on this list that maybe if you didn't have enough balance on the Swiss ball, you're able to do it on the Bosu Ball. Versatile, it can actually work as a bench as well, so you can do a lot of chest press and different things like that. You won't get the balance challenge as you will with the Swiss ball, but again, a lot of variety with this. Now with cons, maybe the one con I have, and again, I use these professionally. I've had 2 different Bosu balls for a number of years, probably about 15 years, and they have little pads on them. And I found after a period of time, the pads wore off. Keep in mind, a lot of people have used them over the years. So use them inside, outside. That's probably the reason why they wore off. But the nice thing about it is I was able to get on their website and find the replacements for these relatively cheap. That might be the one con I have. Other than that, a lot of pros for this. The other con I have, a little bit costly for this particular guy. This one is $129, but for what you get, I think it's a good value for that. The next equipment on my list is the squat rack, and I'm actually including the squat rack with the barbell set. So this is a barbell with a 300-pound set. The weights are all over here. So the combined weight, if everything's on the bar, is 300 pounds. Now there's a lot of versatility to the squat rack, obviously when you have the barbell with it as well. So you can do things like you can do tubing off of it, just for instance. And usually most of the squat racks have a top bar on this. I got this particular one that didn't have that. So my top bar is up here hanging off there. So with the squat rack, you can also use suspension straps, and you can use other things. There's a lot of other devices to it. Again, this really expands your ability to what you can do in your home gym. And of course, having the barbell with the 300-pound set, that expands it so much more. You can do squats, you can do deadlifts, you can do a bench press. You can use that with a Swiss ball, or you can also get a bench. And a bench is not on my particular list here, but you can use a bench to expand that as well. So a variety of different uses. Again, you can do pretty much every exercise you can do with the barbell. You can do that with this setup right here. So those are all the pros, or those are some of the pros. Now let's get into the cons. So first of all, space. You need to have a lot of space. You need not just the space for the bar, but to be able to get the weights on and making sure you're not hitting anything as you're using it. You need to have space to take the bar off towards the front, or even off these cleats right here where you can hang the bar down and you can do exercises. And then storage space. So they do make systems that actually you mount to the wall and they go up and it gets nice and tight. But most squat racks, I haven't looked into those as far as cost, but I know those are going to be a pretty penny. So you do need to have storage space for this as well. And then of course for the plates and the bar, you need to have storage space for that. The other con for this is the cost. So the cost for this, for a squat rack similar to this, I couldn't find this particular one. The cost for this is 240 pounds for the squat rack. And in this current time with the prices for the barbell set, for me it was a little bit crazy finding it, but I found the barbell set. The price for that currently is $450 just for the barbell set with all the plates. And it's an Olympic set, but $450. So you're spending roughly about $700 for the whole setup with this. But if you compare that, if you get over a year or two with having this setup only versus having a gym membership, you're probably going to make your money back, because the gym memberships, I mean, they go, $40, $60, $80, $100, and $120 a month. So it may be just a few months and you already have it back with this setup. Now I know that's a big cost. That is the one reason why this actually ranks lower on my list, is the cost and the space. Other than that, this has to be on my list because of the versatility and everything you can get out of this particular setup. The next on my list are medicine balls. So I have two different types of medicine balls here. Ironically, the smaller medicine ball is actually the heavier one for these particular ones. This one, the bigger one is 8 pounds, the smaller one is 10 pounds. So with the 8 pound, the reason why they're different, this one is a bounceable ball. So when you throw it in the ground, it actually bounces up to you. The smaller one, but the heavier one, is actually what's called a dead ball. So when you throw it down into the ground or when you throw it up in the air, it actually dies where it lands. There's a nice reason for having both of these. I do a lot of different exercises where I'm having a client throw the ball up in the air doing explosive exercises. And when the ball lands, it stops where it lands so they can go over and get it and then do the next rep instead of it bouncing and them having to chase it. The nice thing about the bounceable ones is you can do a lot of explosive stuff where you're throwing it into the ground or throwing it against a solid wall like a brick wall, and the ball will bounce back to you and you can do several reps in that way. So there's a variety of reasons to have each of them. They're really versatile. There's a lot of different things you can do, but particular use, general use, this is where we get into some of the cons. The reason why these rate so low on my list, so this is close to the end of my list, is there's several pieces of equipment that I would prefer you to have way before you have medicine balls. Again, I love medicine balls, but that's one of the reasons why it goes down on my list. The other one is cost for the price of medicine balls. So for a 10-pound medicine ball, either a bounceable one or a dead ball, they're $27 each. And if you want to get a 12, a 15, 18, or a 20 pound, the price reflects that and goes up quite a bit for those. So those are my cons on my list. But for the exerciser that already has a lot of different pieces of equipment, medicine balls are a great addition to the gym. The next piece of exercise equipment on my list is a power wheel, and this is by Lifeline Fitness. There are a bunch of different ab rollers that you find on the internet, on Amazon and all that. But the reason why I love this one so much is not only can you do the wheel rollouts from your upper body, but you can actually hook this guy on, so you can hook your feet in here, put the tubing on the back of your heels, and this expands what you're able to do with this particular piece of equipment. Now those are some of the pros, and actually in this particular case, I really don't have any cons for this particular piece of equipment, other than maybe this. After a period of time, so I have two of these, and I ran into this with both of them. The handles start to get a little bit funky, so I actually used tennis handle grip on these, and that's the way I kind of secure the handles. So the handles, the foam starts to wear out a little bit and starts to get a little funky. That would probably be the one con I really ran into with this. Other than that, really great equipment. The reason why it's so low on my list, it doesn't have the versatility of working the rest of the body like the other pieces of equipment on my list. And for the price, this one's $50. It's a great value actually for what you get working your abs. But again, it's only working your abs and a few other body parts, not like the rest of the pieces of equipment on my list. Now on my list, we're talking about mats. So this one will carry over not just from strength. It's the last one on my strength list, but it'll carry into the cardio as well as the stretching. So I want to talk about mats here. So the first mat I'm going to talk about, I have 3 different mats I'm actually going to talk about here. The first one here is just a personal mat, throw on the ground, and you can use this. This one I like. It's thick. It's a professional mat. So the pros on this is really comfortable. You can lay on it, do all your exercises that you need from this. The biggest con for this, I'll talk about the prices individually as I go through, is this guy is $118 for this mat. And it's just a personal mat. It is thick. I find the price quite expensive for what you get in this particular case. On the link below, I have this mat listed. I wanted to list it and show you this, but I actually have another mat listed that's somewhat comparable. I've actually not had that in my hands, but it's from a really good company, SPRI or SPRI. That particular mat, which is somewhat comparable, is $43, and that also is in the link down below. So the personal mat, that's the first one. The next one I'm going to talk about is an area mat, the next 2 actually. So this is this guy right here. It's got a little bit of thickness, not as thick as that personal mat, but it's a bigger area. So this one's 6 by 4 or 4 by 6, 4 foot by 6 foot. I like these because I can do a lot of exercises. In the garage here, it keeps you from skidding, and it also has a little bit of comfort when you're doing lunges or you're doing squats or whatever from them. And this actual material and thickness is the same as this one right here I'm standing on. The difference is the size. The second one I'm standing on, the squat rack is on top, so it's nice to have this in place. So when I'm doing squats, deadlifts, or all the other exercises from here, or I'm working with the suspension straps or any of the other exercises, I have this area mat I can do right from here. It's already set in place. And the one price I have is for the 4x6 area mat in this particular case, and that one's a little bit more expensive, $130 for the area mat, but they're really nice to have. It's something that you don't necessarily need to have. You can have a personal mat, either the one I showed you or the one that's in the link that's quite a bit cheaper than the one I showed you, and that might be good enough for what your needs are, but the area mats are nice to have as well. Now we're getting into the cardio portion of the shopper's guide. So when I go through the cardio exercise, I only have one traditional cardio piece of equipment on this entire list. The rest of the pieces are stuff you can do cardio or agility exercises. They get your heart rate up, but I really love these, and they're very inexpensive relative to cardio pieces of equipment. The first one on that list is a traditional jump rope. So the nice thing about the jump rope is it's very versatile. You can take it anywhere. You can do it virtually anywhere. And you can even take this when you travel. So in other words, you can just throw this in the suitcase. It tucks up really nice and neat in the corner of the suitcase, and you have your cardio piece of equipment wherever you go. The cons for the jump rope is there is a little bit of a learning curve if you're not used to using the jump rope. If you're not as coordinated, it may take you a little bit longer to get used to the jump rope. But again, overall, very versatile. This to me is one of the highest high-end jump ropes, and this is $45. Relative to all other cardio equipment, it's relatively inexpensive. The nice thing about the jump rope is you don't have to get a high end. You can get one of the cheapy ones that have just plastic handles. You just adjust them. It's just a plastic cord, which this one is, by the way, as well. $10, $12, and you have a jump rope, and it's good to go. I just like to have the swivel handles, and I like the feel of this one. That's the reason why I have a little bit more expensive jump rope. The next piece of equipment on my list is a traditional tall cone. And you usually get these in the collection, so 4, 8, 12. And in this particular case, the link in the description I have is for a 12-pack. You don't necessarily need that many cones, but it is nice to have that variety. So there's a lot of variety of different exercises you can do. There's a lot of hurdles, a lot of hopping, a lot of running around the cones. Really get the heart rate up, really get a lot of fitness results. That's the reason why I love these. The downside or the cons for this particular case is if you have a lot of orthopedic issues, the cones may not be the best choice for you. You may end up having a lot of issues trying to get around or navigate the cones or get the best use of the cones. So those would be some of the cons. Overall, really inexpensive. A pack of 12 is $15. Next on my list are low cones. Now there's a lot of advantages to having the tall cones, and if you have to get one or the other, it's much better to get the tall cones rather than get the low cones. The reason is you have a higher cone that you have to do some stepping over for some different agility, or hopping over for some plyometric type work. The one advantage to having the low cones is they have the hole, and I do a lot of drills with different clients where I'll put tennis balls in the cones and they have to retrieve the tennis balls, and that adds a little bit of fun, a little bit of variety to the exercise. And you can set these up just the way you can with the tall cones, where you can set them up for either agility or running and that sort of thing. Again, the one disadvantage is they don't have the height of the tall cones, so you're not getting the plyometric work and you're not getting the step over work that you would with the tall cones. So those would be some of the cons, but overall this is a really good thing to have in your toolbox, and to get a pack of 20 of these is $12. The next piece of equipment on my list is the Pro Agility Ladder. Now in this particular case, I want to give a little preface. This is the one time I'm showing you a piece of equipment that's not the link in the description. And the reason why I'm not showing you the Pro Agility Ladder is when mine broke, and I had mine for about 15 years before it finally broke down and it broke, I went to replace it, and it took about a year and a half before I had to cancel the order. It was right in the middle of the pandemic, and there was issues with supply issues, and the company just couldn't get it at that particular time. That's the reason why I have this. I got a different replacement. I actually wish I had the Pro Agility Ladder. This one's a little bit challenging. The plastic is a little bit cheaper, I would say. So this is the same length as the Pro Agility Ladder, so it's a 20-foot ladder, but it's a little bit harder to get on and off this storage bracket, whereas the Pro Agility Ladder, it slides off nice and easy. There are definitely other agility ladders that are cheaper, but you get what you're paying for in this particular case. They're cheaper, but they're going to break down a lot sooner. They're also, you have to be careful because some of them are only 10 foot long. You want to make sure to get the full length. There's a lot more you can do with it. When you get the shorter ones, there's only so much you can do, and your drills end up being a lot shorter, and you don't get as much benefit out of it. The cons are, first of all, the cost. It's $120 for the Pro Agility Ladder. So it is far and above the cost of a lot of other agility ladders. I think it's worth it in that particular case. The other con would be if you have any orthopedic issues, or if you have coordination issues. I actually find that a pro, especially being a trainer. If you have coordination issues, you start to train, you improve your coordination. But if you have orthopedic issues, the use of the agility ladder will not improve those orthopedic issues. So overall, I think the Pro Agility Ladder is a really good addition to most people's gym equipment. Next on my list are agility rings. And the reason why this rate's a little bit lower than the agility ladder is I personally like having that ladder that goes all the way straight. It's kind of fixed unless you happen to catch it, but it's fixed in the position, and whatever drills you're doing, you have a lot less likelihood of having, if you kick it, to have to chase it down as you would with the rings. But the reason why the rings are also on the list is there's a variety of exercises you can do with the rings that you cannot do with the agility ladder. So for instance, you can stack the rings up like the ladder, but you can also separate them so you can give a lot of variety to the drills you can do. So I've already mentioned a little bit of pros and cons within this. So the pros are there's a lot of variety you can do. The cons are that if you happen to, while you're doing the drill, if you happen to kick the ring, it's going to slide away and you're going to have to reset it. It's going to be a little bit of a challenge in that way. So not many cons, but that is one particular con for these particular rings. The cost on these, $28 for a pack of 12. It's nice to actually have more than 12. There's a lot more you can do with it when you have more than 12. 12 will get you started, and it's a good addition to most people's gym equipment. The next piece of equipment on my list are power hurdles. I love these. I'm only showing one. I actually have 4 of them. You can buy these one at a time. That's the nice thing about purchasing them. So some pros is you get a lot of dynamic strength and cardio with the same particular exercise, or a lot of the different exercises you can do with these guys. You can do hops, you can do step overs, you can do side hops. There's a variety of different exercises you can do. The cons with these, there's a couple different cons. First of all, orthopedic issues. I definitely recommend not to use these, not to have these until you at least overcome those orthopedic issues. The other thing with this is this top plate or this top thing is actually plastic. If you were to happen to land squarely on the plastic's gonna break. So that's another con. And the other con, which is not that big of a deal unless you happen to catch it. So when I've actually hit this, I haven't broken the plastic, I've actually kicked these off. So usually you're pretty good with it, you're not gonna break this, but that is a con, you can happen to break this. The adjustability, so you can adjust them a lot, so that's a pro, but adjusting them, it takes a while. You have to line it up. So whatever size, so this is 21 inches, and then you have to line it up over on this side. So if you, as you see, I'm pretty good with these, but it's taken me a while just to adjust that. So a lot of adjustability on the height, but it's a little bit awkward to adjust them. So if you happen to be in the middle of a drill and you knock one of these off and you have to reset it, you're gonna have to slow down to set it back up. So those are some of the cons for this, but overall it's a really nice addition. It gets a lot of plyometric and dynamic strength and cardio at the same time. The price on these that's another con. It's a little bit expensive for these. For one of them is $44, but if you have the money and you have the space for it, again, it's a good addition to your gym. The next addition to cardio equipment is a double M bag. And I really love this for the enjoyment of it and the hand-eye coordination development with this particular one. Now, in this case, this is actually a little deflated. I've had it stored for a little while. I did want to hang it up to kind of demonstrate a little bit. I don't have the anchor set up either. I actually have a water-filled anchor that has no water in it right now, so I'm not showing that at this particular time, but I'll have the link for the anchor in the description as well. So the pros for this, there's a lot of dynamic cardio. You can do a lot of different drills with this, get your heart rate up, and again, a lot of fun, a lot of dynamic hand-eye coordination. The cons is it can be a little frustrating, and especially there's different size of balls. The smaller the ball, the more challenging it is. And this one's one of the smaller balls. You can get a bigger ball and it can be a little bit less challenging. It is definitely a nice addition to your equipment. It's not tops on the list because there's a lot of other things I would actually list higher. But if you have the ability and when you're done, you can take this off and it stores really easy. So for the most part, not a lot of cons with this particular exercise other than price. So the cost on this one is $80, where some of the other pieces earlier in the list are a little bit cheaper. But if you have the space, it's well worth the price. Another piece of equipment on my list, I'm staying with the boxing theme, is a slip bag. Now you won't get as much cardio out of this as a double M bag or some of the other pieces of equipment on my list, but there is a lot of dynamic things you can do with this. It will get the heart rate up, and the added benefit, you'll get a lot of oblique training when you use this guy. So as you use it, you get a lot of head movement and all that. So you're getting your heart rate up some, and like I said, you're getting a lot of abdominal training with that as well. So the cons with this is it can hit you in the head. So that's one of the reasons why you're using this, is to get some head movement so you can get hit in the head. Unless you're really swinging it, you're probably not going to get a concussion or anything like that. You're not going to get damaged. It can just be frustrating, especially as you're in the middle and you think you're doing really well and it whacks you in the head. Again, another con would be that you're not getting as much cardio as you're using this. Other than that, again, if you have the option and you have the ability, nice addition. This is $20 for this particular slip bag. It's a nice addition if you want a little bit of core work along with a little bit of heart rate increase. The final piece of exercise equipment on my cardio list is a spin bike. The reason why I like a spin bike versus, say, a treadmill or elliptical or some of the other electronic type pieces of equipment is this is the bare bones. There's no electronics with this. And even if you buy one that has electronics, it's only monitoring what you're doing. It's not actually running this system. So when you're paying for this, you're getting a lot more money, a lot more bang for your buck, versus if you pay the same amount. So this particular bike, this is an older model, but the new model of this particular bike is $1,400. So it's going to be on the cons list. It's a higher ticket item. It's the most expensive thing I have on this entire shopping list. But to pay for a treadmill $1,400, you're going to get a lot cheaper version. It's going to have a tendency to break down relative to the bike because you have to pay for the components, the motors, and all that on the treadmill or the elliptical or those type of things. The reason why the spin bike is on my list is you get a lot more money for what you pay for. Again, this is $1,400. I will try and find, hopefully I can find this by the time I edit this and put everything together. I can find a cheaper version that I think is a good bike as well. Hopefully $800 to $1,000. The other thing I will tell you with this is if you're at a garage sale or you're somewhere else and you find a spin bike, or on Craigslist or whatever, you find a spin bike, get on it really quickly, test it, see how it feels. If it feels good and it's relatively inexpensive, get that thing. You want any chance you can get to get a nice piece of equipment at a lower cost. These hold up very well. This particular bike, I want to say is 10, 11 years old, and no signs of breaking down, no signs of issues at all with this particular bike. So the other con with this, obviously I said the cost, $1,400 for the newer model of this. Another potential cost of this is having the space to store it. But as you can see, it's not really big, but maybe if you have a squat rack or you have some of the other equipment, you don't really want to take up a lot of space. That might be another issue as well. One other con I do have to say, if you've never used a spin bike, as you start to pedal on the wheel, I'll see if I can demonstrate this from here. The wheel picks up, it's a weighted wheel, so to slow it down, you actually have to slow your pace down or you have to hit the brake. So if you're not used to that, that could be a con that can cause a little bit of an injury. Again, if you're not used to it and you get it going a little bit too fast and it starts taking you for the ride. So that's something to be aware when you have a spin bike versus a traditional exercise bike. Other than that, this is a really good piece of equipment to have as part of your gym equipment. We're now in the stretch portion of the shopper's guide. So this is where I'm showing you the stretch and the massage devices that I use and definitely recommend. I'm starting out with a stretching strap. So this guy has a lot of hooks and a lot of different spots. So you can do a variety of different stretches. So for instance, you can do an overhead stretch where you're doing inner and outer shoulder rotation. You can do a hamstring stretch, a quad stretch. I love this. It's versatile. You can throw this in the suitcase, take it with you wherever. This is a nice addition to have in your gym equipment and relatively inexpensive for what you get for this. This one's $18 for it. This next piece of equipment is a trigger point therapy massage ball. There's a lot of pros for this. This is the most used for myself personally. I use this more than any other massage device and probably use it at least 2 or 3 times a week, if not more. It's nice for at home and definitely for travel. It's really small, easy, just pop it in the suitcase. 2.5-inch diameter. They do have bigger versions. The reason why I like this size is it can get into a lot of areas where maybe a bigger ball or a bigger device cannot get into. The downside to this, and with most of these massage stuff I'm going to show, is it has its limits and there's only so much it can do. So it can get a lot of the small areas, but as the bigger areas or along my spine, this does not do a good job. But overall, for a lot of the muscle issues that I have and what I recommend for clients, another potential con is this is a dense ball. It does have a lot of give, but it's really solid. So after a little bit of give, it is really solid. So it can be uncomfortable if you're not used to getting in deep into different trigger points that you might have. But overall, I think it's a really good thing to have. You can throw it in the suitcase. It's really small and compact. And it's really good to use. I use it several times per week. For the price that you pay, I think you really get a lot of benefit for this. $18 for this particular ball. Next on the list is a foam roller, and this is the first of 3 foam rollers I have on my list for therapeutic massage type things. The reason why this one rates so high is the other 2 that I'm going to show in the next 2 segments are actually I use more for professional uses. They're nice to have, but this one's a lot more versatile. It's hollow, so if you use it for travel, you can actually stuff either a couple of your massage devices, or you can stuff your socks and underwear. And although it is a little bit bigger for packing and taking, I do carry this when I do travel. It's nice because it's solid. It does have the finger grooves on the foam roller itself. Personally, I don't notice these. I don't notice that this gets in any different than any of the other parts of the foam roller. But I like this because I can do a full roll all the way up and down my spine. I can roll it down on my legs, my hamstrings, my calves, any area that I find sore, a little bit tight, or that I need to get released because of some issue, either on the road or at home. This is a nice one to have. And for the price, relatively a good value. This one's $32 for the price on this one. So it's a good addition, even for the active or non-active person. So you can release a lot of different trigger points that you might have. As I mentioned, this is going to be the second of the 3 foam rollers that I'm showing. The first one being the trigger point. This one can do a lot of what the trigger point can do, and then a little bit more. There's different mobilizations I have a person do, so laying on the ground. This can take out the full from head to tail. So you can lay on the ground and do some open up, twist your upper body one way, lower body the other way. And that really opens up, so twisting back and forth. This can do, again, a lot of the rolling out of the legs, the back, the hamstrings, the calf. So a lot of versatility. The reason why this is a little bit lower on the list is it's really hard to travel with this. You have to set this aside, and you really can't travel with this like you can with the trigger point. The other thing is this one's a little bit more expensive, so this is $36 versus the trigger point massage foam roller. That one's $32. This is the third of the 3 foam rollers. This is the one other time where the link in the description, I could not find this particular foam roller, so I found one. It's a 4-inch diameter, similar to this. The one in the description is actually a little bit firmer than this, so this has a little bit more give. The reason why I have this on the list is there's so many benefits I have for my clients when I show them how to use this. But the reason why it ranks a little bit lower on the list is you really need to know what you're doing when you use this particular one. So it's a little bit more challenging. If you're going to get one foam roller, I would start with the first one on the list, the trigger point therapy. But this is nice because you can get in areas where a bigger foam roller is a little bit harder to do. So you can get a little bit deeper, or you can hit the trigger point a little bit better with a smaller foam roller. Whereas a bigger foam roller, it won't get in quite as deep. The cost on this, that's one of the cons on this. So not for this particular one, but the one in the link is $50. And that's the reason is that one's a bit denser, but not as good value for this particular one for $50. But still, it's a nice addition to have if you're able to do it. The next on my list is a neck and shoulder massager. And to be quite honest with you, I use this for a lot more than just my neck and shoulders. I use it for my upper back, mid back, lower back, even my hamstrings and quads, and calves as well. So it's quite versatile. It's nice. It's really easy to kind of set in your back. And the nice thing about this, so it does have a cord. I pulled the cord out for demonstration purposes. So I unplugged the cord, but you can use this, and you have these pockets here, and you can pull and get a little bit deeper massage. And you can do this a couple different ways. So you can get a certain way, and then you can flip it around, and it hits a little bit differently this way. I really like this. It does have a heat source that you can turn on and off, so you can get a heated massage, or you can just get a regular massage. You have 2 hands in there that have fingers, and they actually twist in opposite directions. And it's programmed to where it'll go, the wheels will roll one direction, so they'll both go opposite directions that way. After a period of time, it'll roll and go the other way. So it'll go back and forth, and I don't know the duration. I always run it probably about 2 or 3 times. It's probably about 5 or 10 minutes. My guess probably 10 minutes on the program. Nice device to have. Not a lot of cons. I get a little bit wary about how much pressure I'm putting if I have it on my back, where I feel like I might break it down. I've had it for several months, no issues with it, but that would be one of the cons I think might happen if I were to put too much pressure on it. Other than that, this is $60 for this particular device. I think overall it's a good value for it, maybe a little bit high in the cost, but $60 for a massage device that you can do all different areas of your body, I think that's a pretty good value for that. So it's a good addition for your exercise equipment. The next one I'm showing is a fascial gun. This is nice to have, and there's a lot of these versions on the market. There's some much more expensive. I haven't used a lot of them. I've only used this particular one, so I don't have a lot of experience with some of the other ones. I really like this. It does have a few different attachments. So it has the ball. Let me grab a few of the other attachments. It has just kind of a flat one. It has a more of a fork. So this guy right here. And then it has kind of a pointed one. So it has a variety of attachments that you can have. It has a lot of different levels. So I think it's about 5 different levels on how high it pulses up. It's a rechargeable, so you plug it in, recharge it at night, and then you can use it. To be honest with you, I've really only used the ball. I've used a couple of the other attachments a couple times. I haven't used the other attachments all that much. I do use the neck and shoulder massager much more than I use this one, but this is still nice to have. One of the cons I notice is if I put too much pressure, and I'll actually demonstrate this, it actually stops it. So it doesn't break the machine, but it'll stop it. So I'll do this, and you notice right there, so it'll actually stop it. So I don't get as much pressure as I'd like to have on this, but overall it's a really nice device. It works out the muscles that I need it to when I do use it. I think it's a good value for this. This one's only $23 for this, so it's a really good value to have a pulsating massager. Again, a nice addition to your gym exercise equipment. This is the last piece of equipment on the list. This is a massage cane. So when you look in the link in the description, you're going to notice that it's going to be a little bit different. The biggest difference is there's more of a point on the end. It doesn't have this hook. I think they probably have found that this isn't as usable to have this little curve on the bottom. I will be honest, the reason why this is on the bottom of my list, I don't use it nearly as much as some of the other devices. I've had this probably one of the longest of all the massage devices. It is nice to get in certain areas where you kind of get that spot and then you can pull and you can kind of hold and work that trigger point out. And obviously there's a lot of versatility to this, a ball or more of a point. There is a lot of uses for it. It's nice. It is definitely a nice addition. To be honest with you, this does get a lot of dust in my household. Again, I have a lot of other devices I use a lot more. I did want to get this on the list because this is a nice piece of equipment to get a lot of trigger points out that maybe some of the other ones won't get out as effectively. The cost for this, that's another con in this particular case. So it's $50 for this. Whereas I think if you have some of the other devices, you get a lot more benefit for the cost. But still, I think it's a nice device to have if you're able to have it. For examples on exercises with the equipment I've shown, go to my YouTube channel, Athletic Power and Performance. For coaching or training for athletes, go to my website, athleticpowerandperformance.com. For coaching and training for non-athletes, go to aaronrobinette.com. The links for all the equipment I've shown in this video are in the description.